Weird weekend in the Big 12. Iowa State got blasted at home by a Kansas State team that entered 9-11. We're going to get to that. Texas Tech lost its leading scorer and coach in the opening minutes and still won at Houston. We'll get to that. Bobby Hurley pulled his team off the court, didn't shake hands with Tommy Lloyd. We'll get to that. But let's start in Waco, where Baylor came from 21 points down to beat Kansas. Final score, Baylor 81, Kansas 70. Norlander, you wrote about it. Tell us what you decided to focus on.
Well, okay. Yeah, Big 12 was the most compelling league of the day on Saturday. And frankly, had Calipari not won at Kentucky, maybe we would have opened on the conference, I think, at large for maybe the first time this season. Nevertheless, we're here now. Let's get into it. And I think that the Kansas loss was as meaningful a result as any that we saw on Saturday. Big 12 also had the best game of the day, which we'll get to in a second with the Red Raiders and the Cougars. Kansas fans I know are frustrated, and I wrote a column. You can read it, cbssports.com on the CBS Sports App. A couple things going on here with the Jayhawks. They find themselves in a lot of close games. They find themselves caught up in games where they're at threat of losing late when they should have never been at threat of losing late to begin with. And I don't know what Bill Self is going to do to fix this. He's a really, really good coach. The column points out that Kansas right now is really flirting with something that it has not experienced. These are champagne problems. I understand that, but still, it's Kansas. And as I wrote in the column, it is literally a different standard than every other program in all of college basketball. When you look what it's done and how it has lorded over its conference for decades, there is not another program that actually has the standard of the Kansas Jayhawks, at least within the context of what it does in its league and the regular season, let alone the fact that obviously the amount of one seeds it gets and national titles, all of that. Kansas has not finished outside the top 3 in its league in back-to-back seasons since a year after I was born, 2 years after I was born, 81, 82, 82, 83 was the last time it happened. They haven't even finished back-to-back seasons outside the top 2 since the 1980s period. It was about 7 years after that. And now they're pacing to do this. And ironically enough, this is happening in consecutive seasons in which they were the number 1 team in the preseason. KU fans listening and that are worth their salt are all too aware of the weird fact that Kansas has never even made a Sweet 16 ever when it's been a preseason number 1 team. And now you're getting there's some weird juju here again. For whatever reason, he's not playing Flory Badunga nearly enough as I think he should. And obviously Kansas fans, GP brought it up a few weeks back, the KJ Adams stuff, DeJuan Harris, there's just something it's not working collectively. The transfers aren't as good as they should be. Kansas lost the game on Saturday after holding a 21-point lead. It was the biggest blown lead in the history of that program. And Kansas became the first team that was ranked in at least 15 years to lead a game by 15 or more points at halftime and then go on to lose that game by double digits. That's exactly what we saw on Saturday. Because it's Bill Self and frankly, because it's Kansas, I'm not going to put off the potential for there to be a pretty sharp turnaround and for KU to get its act together. But I've heard from a few folks here on Sunday about just some uneasiness. Like, are we really just going to be average again? And by average, by Kansas standards. So KU had no business blowing that game, like none whatsoever. And credit to Baylor, which needed Rob Wright he went next level. They lost VJ Edgecombe, who's going to be a top 5 pick. Absolutely a top 10 pick. He was gone for most of the second half. They didn't have Jeremy Roach for the game. And Baylor, which has had its own issues, it hasn't found its identity, Parrish, for 2.5 months. It manages to pull out a win that, frankly, like you win a game like that, maybe that really does put your trajectory of your season on just a little bit of a different course. But to me, for as good as the win it was for Baylor, I just felt compelled to write about Kansas on a super busy, super noisy day because I think there should be some alarm bells ringing when you look at the pattern that has established with so many of these KU results. This team should be better than it's been over the past month, and it's fallen well short of what most people thought it would have been when we went back to November.
I think the way you put it is accurate, that Kansas's problems are always, or at least usually, smaller than most people's problems. Like I go on radio in Kansas City every week with Sarin Petro, and we end up talking a lot about Kansas. And it's always like, or not always, but like in some seasons we get into these conversations like, what's wrong with the Jayhawks? And it's like, well, they're ranked 13th in the country, so like not too much.
Yeah.
But they were preseason number 1, and they're so clearly not that in terms of resume, eye test, even ceiling. I don't see that as a ceiling right now. Like, even if, like,
I agree.
I don't even see that as a ceiling. And so two things can be true at the same time. Kansas is 10th at KenPom. That's not bad. Kansas is weird and wildly disappointing. Like, both of those things are kind of true. The game against Baylor was just like, what? First off, did it surprise you that they'd never lost a game when leading by 21 points? That just seemed like you've been playing basketball forever. Sure.
Yeah, only because it didn't surprise me because it's Kansas. Like, Kansas shouldn't lose a game when it's up by 20. So, and I think the previous record, I want to say it was 15. I saw 1,000 stats yesterday, but I think the record was 15 or 16 prior to that the biggest blown lead. So this was comfortably a record for the program.
Yeah, I was just like, they've been playing basketball there forever. I'm sort of surprised this is the first time this has ever happened.
Surprised it wasn't James Naismith, to be honest.
Yes, that mediocre guy. Surprised. I think I could have smacked him around by at least 30.
No doubt.
I know 2-year-old Tony Hinkle would have.
We know that for sure.
I know that for a fact.
No doubt.
I mean, it's just outrageous to say it out loud. Baylor outscored Kansas 64-32 over the final 21 minutes.
Insane.
I mean, what?
Just, and it comes so much compelling drama here. We can stay on Kansas if you want, but this happens and Iowa State gets smacked at home by K-State. Yeah. These two teams are playing each other Monday night. Compelling developments in the Big 12 right now.
Right. Okay. So last thing on Kansas, because you mentioned it with Flory. Bill has often been less willing to rely on freshmen when he has older options, unless the freshmen are like Joel Embiid, Andrew Wiggins, Josh Jackson, something like that. I remember writing a column about Kelly Oubre during his freshman year at Kansas. He was like in single digits in minutes for much of the first few weeks of the season. It ended up where like that changed, but he still only averaged 21 minutes per game as a freshman, and he was a one and done. Kelly Oubre has averaged more minutes per game in every NBA season in 9 of his 10 than he averaged in his 1 year at Kansas. And so this has been I don't even know if it's a criticism because the guy's got 2 national championships. Like, perhaps he's the one guy who knows what he's doing as it pertains to relying on freshmen, right? Yeah. But that's been a thing. How about this? I've been going on radio in Kansas City for every week for a while, and I've constantly been asked about, why do you think this freshman isn't playing more? Why do you think this freshman isn't playing more? And that's why in recent weeks when KJ Adams got hurt, I thought this might be a possible turning point for KU because now you're forced. You just got to play him. But now we're back to where we were, and that was a tough loss. That big picture, I'm never betting against Bill Self in terms of like, I feel like they're going to be in the tournament, they're going to get a good seed, and then we'll see what happens. But this team just doesn't look right relative to what we thought it was going to be, and it really hasn't at any point in this season.
Yeah, that's what and we got to keep it moving, obviously. Yeah. There's so much to get to. But I wrote that in the column, GP. Like, we had this discussion a year ago, and it wound up being the worst year ever for Bill Self at Kansas. And now we're getting this again, but the issues are different. Do we have any reason to believe like it won't repeat? Again, it's Self, so I give him a shot, but I understand the high levels of angst with KU fans right now. Like, we hear you loud and clear. Makes for a really compelling team. What the hell happened at Hilton? Like, again, there's one result after another from this. I love this sport. I love covering it. I love my job because Saturday was one thing after another. So I had to, at some point, I had to leave where I'm here right now to go down, make the 40 or so minute drive to the HQ studios in Stamford, Connecticut. So when I do that, I missed a few things. Like I missed Bobby Hurley pulling his team off the floor, and I knew that Iowa State wasn't looking so good. But I get there and it's deep into the second half or whatever, and I'm like, what in the damn world is happening? 80-61. It's just like Arkansas with Kansas State. Where you been the past 2.5 months? Your impressions on what either K-State did or what Iowa State didn't do?
Well, I was sitting with Brent Stover, Kansas State grad, all day, and so he was fired up. And so, like, I'm happy for him, and that's a big part of the conversation we're having in the studio. But the story is obvious. Kansas State still got to do this maybe 2 or 3 more times before we can start having a serious conversation about them getting back into bubble talk. So that's a nice win, but unless you can back it up with more nice wins and avoid the bad losses, then it's just going to be a nice moment in a bad season. With Iowa State, this is at least interesting because they went from never losing to anybody to losing to a sub 500 team by 19 at home. And by the way, I bet you're loving this little twist in their season, aren't you?
I'm not. No, they're going to need like 4 more of these before I can kind of be like, so let's go readdress. I'm not even remotely going near that right now.
Can't get there yet. 2-game losing streak. They've now lost 3 of their past 5, and all 3 of the losses are to teams that are currently unranked in the AP poll. Now, that should change. That should change on Monday because I think Arizona is going to go into the AP poll on Monday. I've got Arizona into the top 25-1 right now. But what I said is true. As of this moment, Iowa State has lost 3 of its past 5 games, and all 3 of those losses are to teams you will not find in the AP poll right now. It's just sometimes basketball is like this. Like you've got a game 1 midweek, and it just gets taken from you. And now and then you don't recover from that. And now here you are. And I don't know that I'm necessarily connecting the dots there, but it went from Iowa State is about to sweep the Arizona schools on the road and come back home for what should be an easy day against Kansas State to, oh no, we went to overtime with Arizona because of a Caleb Love heave. That flipped from a loss to a win. And now we just got smacked around at home, and now we got to go to Allen Fieldhouse on Monday night.
I wonder if the players got caught looking ahead here. Maybe that wasn't the case. And credit to Kansas State, you went in and you just destroyed them. I mean, perfectly executed. And the other backdrop to this is Jerome Tang got booed harder walking into Hilton Coliseum on Saturday than John Calipari did walking into Rupp Arena. The reason for that was Tang a season ago insinuated there was some real nefariousness going on with Iowa State and cheating, and the Iowa State fans did not forget it. So on a day with 1,000 things like that doesn't even register a ton because Kansas State wound up just running him out of the gym. And credit to Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel. Like McDaniel had 20 points. Hawkins had a really nice game. He had 17 and 7 with 4 steals. He didn't miss a 3. K-State, I just like Arkansas, right? I mean, they were 50% from the 3-point line. I do wonder if ISU's players on some, like, how can you not? Like, you got Kansas waiting on the road. This game's at home. K-State's been a letdown. Iowa State had 18 turnovers. Yeah. This was it was the first road win of the season for Kansas State. Kansas State had lost 15 road games in a row. Iowa State had won 29 straight home games in a row.
Yeah. Right.
And credit to ESPN Stats and Info. This is a really good nugget. Kansas State is the first sub 500 team to beat a top 5 opponent on the road by at least 15 points ever. And then I did one more. I looked this up once I got to HQ with our research team because I was curious. I said, I want to know the last time a team that was in the top 5 was at home against an unranked opponent and lost by at least as much as Iowa State did here today. It's only happened one other time in the past 30 years when Nova got destroyed by Ethan Rogge and crew in Creighton back in 2014 by 30 points. It was the only other time this ever happened. Huge swing. Iowa State was what? Was it like a 15-point favorite in this game or something like that? And then Kansas State winds up winning by almost 20 points there. Just an insane and really, really weird result. I do think long term, like I think Iowa State's going to get out of this. Maybe it gets picked off on the road on Monday and takes another loss, but then we get to the beginning of March and it was just like, yep, that was the midseason lull. They're still good. They're still a 1-2 seed. They're still a Final Four threat. I think that's what's going to be the case. But national title contenders for the most part don't have a game like this for the most part. Like that UConn 2014 team had one like this, but usually you don't have this big of a wart.
I just on that stuff, just Iowa State was a 15.5 point favorite. So big number.
Yeah. Okay.
Big number. And I don't know if they were looking ahead, but I do know, or at least I believe it's really difficult for almost anybody to stay focused all the time.
Yeah.
It's human nature in any competition. And if you are a Big 12 team, one of the places in this season where you are probably most likely to lose focus, it's not going to be a game at Houston or a game with Arizona or a game at Kansas. It might be your home game against Kansas State, against the 2 games under 500 Kansas State team that's been struggling all season. I don't care. Like, I always bring up golf because at my age, that's the only thing I really compete at. And I just don't care who you are. Like, you're going to be a hole where you push a ball out to the right, and it's like, wow, I just wasn't focused, or I didn't do just something. Something's going to slip. I don't know any amateur golfer who's ever played 18 holes without having a moment where they lost focus and lost concentration. And it can happen to basketball players too. And that's why I think it's really hard when we hold these good teams in bad leagues to a standard of you can never lose ever. Because it's just not it. I don't want to say it's unrealistic, because sometimes they really do run through it, but it's hard. It's hard to always win every game you're supposed to win, even if you're supposed to win them. And I don't know where this goes for Iowa State. I'm going to trust them. I think they're still good, but you flipped a loss into a win at Arizona, took a horrific loss at home, and now you got to go to Allen Fieldhouse. Like it's all good just a week ago. I think somebody said that one time, and you could probably apply that to Iowa State right now. Let's go down to Houston.
Yes.
This was probably the wildest.
Dude, what a continue. The scene.
Just great. Final score, Texas Tech 82, Houston 81 in OT. For people who haven't seen it, we were not even 4 minutes into the game, and JT Toppin gets trapped, gets doubled on, let's just say, this side of the court, if that makes sense. I know this is a podcast. Sure. I'm sorry.
People listening, it's on this side of the court.
Yes, I'm motioning with my hand, but on the left side of the court. He is trapped in a way. This is the way I described it in the lead of the top 25-1, because if you slow it down, this is what you see. He is trapped in a way where he is almost turned to where he needs to throw the ball, cross court, skip pass, like he's a pitcher, a right-handed pitcher in a stretch. Just picture that. That's where he's at with the ball. Now he's left-handed. So to get this ball all the way across the court, he almost has to jump backwards and twist his body. And when he did that, his leg came up, buddy, and it made contact with a man's nuts.
JoJo Tugler's nuts.
At least the area where you can usually find the nuts. And they went and looked at it, and they called flagrant 2, and they ejected him from the game. Meantime, Grant McCaslin's got a monitor. He sees it. He sees what I just described to you, and I think understandably loses his mind.
Yes, but like as if his family had just been kidnapped. I mean, it was absolute and completely justified. You know what? I give Grant McCaslin credit. I didn't know he had this in him. I did not realize he had that dog in him. This is a huge. Texas Tech is not over, as you know, by ranking this team top 25 and following GP. Their resume is not yet overloaded with a lot of stuff.
That's right. Yes.
You have this moment. JT Toppin is Texas Tech's best player, and ridiculously gets tossed out of this game. Kirby Hocutt, the AD, afterward puts out a statement. I think this is like the second or third time in men's basketball and football that you've had an AD in that league go after the officiating. It's been a consistent thing. I think that story will find its next phase and advancement on Monday. And good on McCaslin. He obviously lost his mind though, and in that moment, I just wonder if I was texting him. I was like, I got to know what you're doing back there. He did not get to me during the game. I know he had his phone, and that's fine. He found me afterward, and I was like, I needed you at halftime. Where were you an hour and a half ago? But I wonder if he had some like immediate regrets, like, oh my God. Now, Jeff Linder's a really, really good coach. He was formerly at Wyoming. He's known McCaslin for a long time, and he steps in and he does a wonderful job, and they get Texas Tech gets to win. They win this game, man. It's incredible. Very few people would have thought TTU was going to win in that spot against Houston. Iowa State loses, 29-game home winning streak is done. That was second longest in the country. Houston's 33-gamer was the longest home winning streak going into Saturday. That one expires too. I call Houston the John Wick of college basketball because it's almost impossible to kill. Somehow, some way, Texas Tech gets it done. Best game of the day. It gets to overtime. Houston, which, stole one at Fog Allen a week ago, finds itself in another just completely riveting, captivating game. Credit to TTU, man. Chance McMillan had 23. Elijah Hawkins, the key point guard transfer from Minnesota, he had 17. Darian Williams, not 100%. He plays. He gives them 13. Juwan Roberts, he had just a number of sequences in this game. I thought he was going to carry him. But the most impressive thing about Texas Tech that I can say right now, it is unbeaten on the road in the Big 12 so far. This was a noisy win. It's top 10. Parrish, this is a top 10 team at Ken Palm right now.
Yeah.
5-0 on the road in Big 12 competition away from home. Nasty team. This is the best start for this program and league play since it joined the Big 12 in 96-97. Red Raiders, you are due a lot of love here. Where do you have them in your rankings? And then and maybe this will correspond to where you have them in the rankings, but power rank the Big 12 from the top from me, because you got to put Houston, Arizona, and we'll get to them in a second, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor. It's those 6, I guess, in whatever order. How would you power rank them right now? State of the program, how the teams are playing. Who's number 1?
I've got Texas Tech at 15th in the top 25 and 1 right now. Their computer numbers are stronger, but you are right. They don't have much of a resume, and I think that's among the reasons. I should rephrase. Much of a resume relative to Auburn or Tennessee or even Iowa State and some of the other teams that have lived in the top 10 this season. But I'm not ignorant to the computer numbers. I'm probably splitting the difference a little bit between the computer numbers and the actual substance of the resume, while relying mostly on the resume. But they're good. That's undeniable. And if you're Grant McCasland, that's all you've been hearing is people like me say, hey, yeah, I think they're good. But, like, what have they really done? Who have they really beaten? How many big signature wins do they really have? And then you got one. You've been prepping for it all week. It's here in front of you. And you're an underdog, and everybody knows Kelvin's great and Houston's great. They won 33 straight at home. But you think you got a pretty good team. Like, I think we could be the ones that snap this thing. Mm-hmm. And then not even 4 minutes in, they take your best player away from you for no reason, for no good reason. And that's awful, by the way. Awful.
You have to be better as an official. I don't even think it's textbook. I think it's flagrant one at worst. I don't even think that's interpretation of the rule personally. If you actually look at what happened there, and they're lucky, quote unquote, that this happens like on the first day of February. Because if something like that happens in March, like it's the biggest story in the sport, that night, the next morning.
Oh, yeah.
But
I mean, if that happens in the NCAA tournament, it's the biggest story.
Yes.
I am not somebody who spends much time complaining about block charge calls and stuff like that. This is hard, man. Yep. You're out there and you got some of the best athletes in the world moving at incredible speeds, and it's quick and it's tough but what they did to reach that conclusion, that shouldn't be tough. You just go look at it and you look at your buddy and you go, we ain't really throwing this dude out of this for that, are we? Yep. Of course not. And you don't do it. I know where his leg went. That was not intentional. It was so obviously not intentional. You know what it looked like? Because I went and looked at this last night. Oh, buddy, sometimes I get bored. Go to YouTube and just Google best plays by shortstops going into the third base hole. It's the same thing. They're going one direction and having to throw back another direction. And you know what your leg does often? It flies in the air. That's what it looked like to me. It looked like a shortstop going into a hole. And if you're an official, you have got to recognize time and place and context and everything. That was not intentional. And then the other thing you got to do after that is let McCasland say whatever he wants to say. But unless he puts his hands on you, you let him stay. This happened a few nights earlier at the NBA level. You might have saw a tweet about it. It involved the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies were out in transition down a point. And final seconds is Jalen Wells, the rookie out of Washington State, who's maybe going to be the rookie of the year. And we didn't even talk about him one time last season.
Holy crap. Is that I don't want to derail, but that's really the thing. Like, he's top 3 for rookie of the year.
Oh yeah. He's starting for the third place team in the West.
That's insane. Love to see it though. Cool.
He might be the rookie of the year. He was playing Division II basketball 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Played at third leading scorer at Washington State last year.
Maybe the Lakers will trade for him in 3 years.
That's maybe. So anyway, he's out in transition. I promise there's a point to this. And the officials blow the whistle because Taylor Jenkins, the Grizzlies coach, on the sideline was going, go, go, go. And they thought he yelled. They thought he asked for a timeout. When he was going like this, go, they thought and they blew the whistle and Taylor Jenkins lost his mind. He was cussing and yelling, and they let him go. They let him say it. Yeah. That's my point. When you screw up like that, you can't compound the problem that you created. And that's what the officials did then. They compounded the problem they created. You just threw a team's best player out for no reason, and now the coach is understandably pissed, and now you're going to throw him out too? So I don't mean this in the way that – I don't mean like I'm glad Texas Tech won, because that would imply that I'm glad Houston lost, and I'm not glad about any of it. But that was a neat scene with, I could just sort of picture it, Grant and JT sitting in the locker room watching the game together. And Grant
he posted a photo. I didn't
I saw it.
Not on time, but there was a photo that he posted after the fact, and just a huge win.
And Chris Walker made this point on one of our halftimes or post-game show last night. Chris Walker, of course, former interim coach himself. Mm-hmm. He got a special place in his heart for interims. Yep. Like Jeff Linder is a Division I head coach. And so Grant didn't just turn his team over suddenly. Hey, guys, we got 36 more minutes to play against Kelvin Sampson in Houston. I'm handing it over to just somebody who's never been in a situation like this. Like Jeff Linder's coached in meaningful games. And so, I think sometimes it can be beneficial to have somebody like that on your team, on your roster, on your staff. And congrats to Jeff Linder, because that's a good memory for him as well.
Let's go down to Tempe. The game was on CBS. Again, I missed the end of this because I was in transit, but Arizona wins 81-72 over Arizona State. Caleb Love is good again, 27 points. Jaden Bradley also was him and KJ Lewis. I mean, they all had good moments there. I was watching it before I had to dip out there. But Love is really, he's on a little bit of a heater right now. But then Love, I might have been just Love. Hurley said afterward, quote, right near our bench, it was relentless, constant chatter from a couple of Arizona players that wasn't being policed properly. Of course, they're going to be happy with winning, but it was done with no class, in my opinion. So Arizona State's BJ Freeman headbutts Caleb Love. And first Love got ejected, then they went to the monitor, then they ejected Freeman, and then there was, the way the game played out, as I understood it after the fact, they wanted to get him off the floor entirely, and then actually Arizona State technically had to inbound the ball because there was the shot clock expired and all this whatever. And so then Hurley doesn't I still he doesn't and this was the right move. By the way, the right move, but he's like party's over, let's go. And there's a couple players that are on Arizona's side, and I think Tommy's trying to just get one or two shakes, and he gets one, but Harry's like, no, it's over, we're done. And then Hurley also said afterwards, quote, I do get a vote for all conference, and I can tell you who's not getting a vote, end of quote. Bobby, if Caleb Love is one of the 5 to 10 best players in the Big 12, I understand if you've maybe got a grudge. Maybe this dude was riding ASU players and trash talking them for 40 minutes, and it was annoying beyond belief. I get that. You can't not vote for a guy as a means of a personal vendetta. What were your thoughts on the latest chapter of Arizona State, which I want to call it a rivalry, and in some parts it is, but ASU, you got to win some of these games at some point, and they couldn't get it done on Saturday.
I am so tired of being asked what I think about what a Hurley did.
Well, it's time. Let's shift gears here.
I mean, I'm just over it. Every week somebody wants to talk to me about what a Hurley did.
Well, it's on them as much as it's on you. And we got some good stuff on the other Hurley coming very shortly. I'm here to praise Bobby for what he made the right move, right? I mean, pulling your team. I'm not someone that says you got to get rid of handshakes. I'm not. Frankly, I'm not really on any side of the hill. But in instances like this, when stuff had really boiled over and it reaches a level where we got a headbutt situation in the paint on one side of the floor, just get him out of there.
I guess where I'm at is I think it was probably smart. These players are going back and forth. One dude just headbutt another dude. Let's maybe not try to force them to be cool with each other and just get them away from each other, opposite locker rooms. I think that's probably smart. I thought Bobby was smart to do that. And then we're just arguing about the handshake between he and Tommy. And I know it's tradition for college coaches to do it. Most times NBA coaches do not. The most normal thing in an NBA game at the final buzzer is for one coach to look at the other coach and go,
yeah,
just one of those with the hand. And I know this is not that, because Bobby didn't go shake Tommy's hand simply because we're not just going to shake hands. He was upset with what had happened. My ears weren't on it. I didn't hear what was said. I don't have a strong opinion on it. That's what I'm telling you. I like Bobby Hurley a lot. He was clearly frustrated with how things unfolded. It is what it is. I'll let his president and athletic director worry about it. It's got no concern. I'm genuinely, and I don't mean like be like, I can't believe you asked me about this, Norlander. That's not what I mean at all.
I know.
I just mean like, Again, this is what we're doing again. Another Hurley, and what do you think about what he said or did or whatever? It's just like, whatever.
I hear. Hey, listen, on a loaded day, that was early in the day. We didn't even know what was waiting us the rest of Saturday. But let's Zona, by the way, is 11-1 in the past 12 now, and just scorching. I asked you the question. I'll answer it real quick, and then we can take the break here. Right now, I think I would power rank the Big 12.
Oh,
I think I would go Arizona 1. I would still go Houston 2, even though Houston lost to Texas Tech. But I'm powering. I'm not trying to just go off one result and have recency bias of 24 hours here. I'd go Arizona 1, Houston 2, Iowa State 3, Texas Tech 4, Baylor 5, Kansas 6 right now. I think that's what I would go 1 through 6. I think that's my order. And Baylor, Kansas is like, but after the way that Kansas lost, that's why I'd have them 6 right now.
Yeah, in terms of like where I have them in the top 25-1, Iowa State's my highest ranked Big 12 team at 6. After that, it's Houston at 10, then Texas Tech at 15, Kansas at 16, Arizona at 25, and then that's it. But that really is not a good reflection of who's playing well right now. That's more of a body of work stuff. But like Arizona's obviously playing really well right now, but they also started 4-5, and those first 9 games matter. So fun league, as always. Maybe hasn't been at the tip top of the sport or the front of the conversation the way it has in years past because of the strength of the SEC, but still a fun league. And I think you would agree, very much up for grabs.